Hey there, thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast, the show where a couple of visual storytellers get together to take on various topics that tend to occur when one goes on this adventure of communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the other host is...
Oh, hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger, and I do user experience design, and I like to make video games too.
And that's going to be kind of our topic this week. Are we doing a video gamey episode of the show?
I think so. Yeah, we're going to talk about this tool. I think a lot of folks who listen to the show probably have even more exposure to it than I. But it's called Unity. Used to be called Unity 3D, but now it's like Unity for everything. It's a huge development toolbox and platform. I mean, you could use it for making 2D games, VR, general purpose software, any kind of thing that, especially if you want to do some kind of advanced display stuff. It even kind of has this like a 3D, environment creation aspect to it as well. So yeah, it's a big tool, but what I look at Unity for is making games, and I think it's probably what it's most well known for. Yeah, but especially 2D games, and then recently I was thinking about 3D as well. So yeah, I have some impressions of Unity that dabbling with it over the years that I think it's one of those things where when you are learning something, you can have some insights and fresh perspective and thoughts that maybe click for people who have used it a long time as well. Just getting fresh eyes and fresh thoughts, and that's kind of where I'm at. Even though I've dabbled with this thing for 4 years or so, and it just one might wonder, well, if you've used this thing for 4 years, why are you saying you're a beginner? Well, because I didn't want to use it.
You were dragged in, kicking and screaming. Why? Well, I mean, then why use it? I mean, surely there's other options.
Right. Well, there's analogs in other creative disciplines, right? You have sort of dominant platforms, and they're strong for a particular reason. It's like either everyone's adopted it, so there's so much thought and use, and there's a great, robust community. Unity kind of has that, but they're not the only place in town where you can create games. I mean, I built Guitar Fretter using the Corona SDK. It's solid, works great. It's still around, and it's, let's see, but that is very much a 2D environment. And sort of has its strengths are the simplicity and whatnot. But then if you start caring about going to additional platforms, going to, what if you want your game to run on a just game console instead of a desktop or a mobile device? All of a sudden, Unity becomes super powered and like a great place to take work that you built it for one thing and you can get it to another platform. It's pretty awesome at that. And it's no small feat, right? Because if you build something using Android's native platform, you build something using iOS native platform, or pick a framework, Corona, or web-based like Phaser, Phaser.js. I've used that for a few years, and that's actually the engine that I built This Panda Needs You with. Pretty great. They address so many different needs and stuff. It's like, oh, I need to put something on the screen. I have to give it the ability to be clicked or touched or interacted with. And then I want things to happen in a certain order, and I want sound effects. And these engines are awesome and great, and they all can do it. But there's this, like, as soon as you say something like, well, now I want to build something that can reach more platforms, your options go narrow pretty fast, as far as to do that in a robust way that isn't like an undue amount of work, where you get to focus on mostly making the thing that you're excited about making, as opposed to hacking and dealing with environmental quirks and challenges, and this thing doesn't compile, and there's this error and that error, and then you're diving deep into figuring out what's wrong with the platform as opposed to making your game. So little by little, I mean, this is the incredibly powerful gravitational pull that Unity has, where I finally went, I'll stop fighting.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good, what do you think? Do I sound like I'm a believer or I'm beleaguered? Or what?
Yeah, you sound, actually, this is why I got excited about you covering this topic this week, is that you sound very measured. You sound like, because you came to it very unwillingly, it makes your belief in the tool that much more believable, right? Because like sometimes you just get excited about something and you haven't really tested it against anything else, right? It's like, why is that one the best? I just love it, right? That's the one that I started using, and that's the one I'm comfortable with, and that's why it's good. There's something to be said for somebody who actually like plays around with all the platforms, tries out lots of. And actually, I think your approach to thinking about anything makes it more interesting to hear your reflections on it. Because I know it's going to be well thought through, and it's going to be very measured and balanced, and it's going to, whatever bias is there, is going to be a bias towards making sure that this thing is framed properly, framed in a way that is useful to people, so that they can make an informed choice as to whether or not they want to dive in and start trying it. I know that. My only experience with Unity was I did a workshop with a company called GameStart. Remember those guys, Rob? I think they're still operating.
GameStart. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
we had Nate Aschenbach on the show a while back, and he is from that organization.
He is from and I worked with them to do a program where he and his group taught kids how to build a game in Unity, and I taught the kids how to design characters, and then they took those characters they created and imported them into Unity to build a side-scrolling platformer game. It was pretty fun to watch them do it. But so, I mean, I know that program is at least accessible enough that it's being used to teach, as young as 9-year-olds. So there's something to it, right? Gotta be.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's a big thing, and it's really powerful. And I suppose we should jump in. It has. And so I think my naive perspective on it, I think, I guess I'm ready to start wandering in there and reacting.
Okay. There.
What?
that didn't do it?
Funny. What's super funny, I can't hear the audio.
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So let me do a quick aside for people who are listening and watching, and they may have noticed, those who are watching, I'm using a different mic. Windows updated this past week on my machine, and when it does that, it says, "Hey, let me fix all your sound settings for you." And I go, "No, don't do that." And it's like, "No, I already did it. Is that great?" And I said, "Oh, now I'm sad because I have to go back and like reset all of my sound settings in the control panel, and I don't remember how they were set up. I got to go back and look up notes and everything." So I guess if you can't hear the sounds that I'm playing, Rob, then the people watching the video can't either. So this will be a music-free episode. All right. So now we're doing screen sharing. Rob's got. I will do my best to try to describe what we see.
Okay. So I mean, I'll do some of the touring as well. I look forward to your questions and reactions and all that too as we go along. Please jump in along the way, Jerzy. And
will do.
And yeah, I mean, that's right. It's the back and forth. You gave me a big endorsement, and I feel the same about your exploration and questioning as well. So I'm glad I'm not doing this alone, right? Because I don't feel like if let's say I prepare to do a workshop on this, I will have turned every nook and cranny and tightened every bolt and explored this thing to a far greater depth than I currently have, because I've learned it a little bit begrudgingly, where it's like, well, what can I do to apply my current knowledge to this, to make something happen in this environment? And I've had a few different game designs and prototypes that I've dabbled on over the years, and we'll look at some stuff, and we'll look at actually an example from Unity proper, which will lead us to some other good conversation as we go. But so yeah, some context, of course, is I may use different names. I'll describe stuff like functionally from my perspective what this is. So this isn't really a branded tutorial, and going to make you a Unity wizard, because I certainly am not yet. But I might be. I don't know. I'm accepting this kingdom. So all right. So what we're looking at is this. We're looking at a couple things. This sort of the scene in Unity, and then sort of this thing on the left, which is like a scene graph. We could think of like as a list or like a hierarchy, and it's a grouping of things. And a lot of the things you see in there are game objects. And then when I click on the different objects, you can see, they highlight, and you're like, well, what's up with this, where it's like I highlight this one, and it's got this sort of a bunch of lines written all over it, and then if I highlight this other thing, it's just a rectangle. Okay, that's interesting. What's up with that? As I go along, I'm just going to say, I might mention this a couple of times, the keyboard shortcuts of QWER are, and then, let's see, TY, all the way up to just QWERTY, right? They are huge to navigate around. And then, doing a combination of that plus your mouse, like how this works with like even, Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint, you get some keyboard shortcuts, but these aren't like fancy combos. They're just literally, I'm pressing the letter Q, and now I have the hand tool, and I can pan around really easy, combining that with the mouse and stuff, right? Okay. Or in my case, I'm using this little Apple trackpad thing accessory. But okay, so what we're looking at is, back to these different game objects. So again, in this scene graph over here, and then in the actual scene, which is like this scene, by the way, we're looking at a 3D window, but we happen to be using it in a 2D mode. All right, so if I unclick 2D, that's the reality. Okay. Unity is a 3D engine pretty much always, and like I'm naively, I didn't appreciate that much, but I also start to get excited about the possibilities as far as being able to do things that are more like Paper Mario. Like, you ever played that game?
Yeah. Or like how in Mario 3 you could sort of like go further back into the background by like crouching on white blocks. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yep, that was fun.
So you could conceivably build a 2D platform game that has sort of extra depth, like literal depth to the
and you're always dealing with that. So there's always this, like, so in a 2D environment, you may have layers that sort of are dealing with the Z axis. So okay, you think about this too. Some basics will jump around. You've got your you have your coordinate system, right? So where does stuff get placed? And you're 2D in dealing with a lot of art or other engines that only consider 2D, you have X and Y. Where is it, relative to the left or the top or whatever, depending on where your like 0, 0 coordinate is. And then as you go up, it moves the thing in as far as you changing the numbers. And this you also have Z if you want, but even in those 2D things, you have some concept of layers and stuff. But maybe not like a great amount of flexibility, where in Z actually, if we start moving stuff, you're going to get a lot more like zoom in, zoom out effect. And it's all built in. It's what's wild. There's so much that's built in. So including like these little squiggly lines, like I pointed out earlier. So if I switch my selection tool again, I go from this navigating one and I hit W, and now I can sort of select and manipulate and move stuff, right? And I can move it just along one axis by just grabbing.
Oh, by grabbing the corresponding arrow that like is centered itself on top of the object, and it locks it to that axis.
Yep. And this becomes incredibly helpful when you're trying to lay things out in 3D, especially.
Oh yeah, anybody who's ever used like SketchUp, and like you think you just move this thing up a little bit, and then all of a sudden you look at it from another angle, like, oh, I moved it up and back, or like moved it up and to the left by more than I intended to. So being able to lock your movement axes is great.
So if we look that so there's this little thing that I have. It's kind of we're kind of looking at sort of some doodled underwatery looking things, right? One of the games I've been dabbling with porting is Underwater Tomato Ninja, and I've also been looking at a sequel to that, Ninja versus Tomato King. It's all placeholder names, right? In the end, who knows? It could be teddy bears versus orangutans. Who knows? Let's see. But there's this idea of you've got like a sprite on the screen. It's so this. If we look at this one little object highlighted has these things on it over here in the inspectors, in the inspector side of the world, and this is revealing more detail about that thing. And so this happens to be a game object with the sprite renderer. So if I shut that off, all of a sudden the visual goes away. And it's got a collider, and it has a rigid body. So the rigid body, 2D, body type, dynamic, what have you. So this combination of the collider means that it can know when it's touched other colliding stuff, right? That's a pretty powerful thing in a game. And then also the like I'm just going to run this and you'll see what happens. And it's going to bump up against the collider of the other things. Bonk. So that's what this whole thing does.
So it automatically calculates the physics of that movement just by giving it that property?
Yeah. So
what we saw, I mean, for the audio, what we saw is that there's this little tiny sprite that Rob had above these coral reef looking things, and just by setting the property to collider, and then he like ran it so that it fell, like the object hovering above is now falling, it just bounces along the different edges and then comes to a stop when it hits like a sort of like a wall. And automatically calculated that the physics of that. That's pretty neat.
And yeah, so that's you'll notice like so I just moved the small plant and I'll hit run again. And this is one of those powerful things of okay, one of Unity's strengths. It's a full environment that I didn't have to now go to the command line and type stuff or what. I'm not working separately. I don't know. I'm pretty playfully integrated with my project. One of the things that I really anchored on with game development was two different places. Well, one of them is Adobe Flash, and then the other one being web browser coding. And this is like neither. It's a little bit Flash-ish, but not really, right? Because Flash, you had the whole timeline and everything. And so to me, my naive perspective, it's a little bit like this living 3D engine that has all this stuff that you could choose to tap into and, or just focus on just some tiny slice of it by saying, I'm only going to work 2D or whatever. And it's just kind of wild how much power you have there in the platform. So let's see. So then we had so why does this rolls like a circle? Because it has a circle collider, right? So if I can edit the collider, and now the rock is going to act like it's that big. I can, if I go to this plantish looking coral thingish thing, and I edit the collider, it is a it's a mesh that follows the entire the rough outline of the thing.
Oh, I see. So instead of it being like a bounding box around it, it actually like it's sort of like text wrap if you're used to desktop applications for word processing, right? So right. It builds a wrap around the object so that if anything collides with a specific corner or edge of it, it doesn't have to be like a square or a circle collider bound.
And let's see. So then, like that little plant had no collider, so things just pass through it, and now obviously it should work a little different. So not everything has to participate in the physics simulation or in the collisions, and look at that. So now the large circle rock comes to rest somewhere else. There's no coding going on here. We're just adjusting settings. And that is one of the other things that's wild to get used to. If you're used to explicitly expressing things in sort of some flow of code, Unity has that for you, but it's you get to it a little bit differently, and in a lot of times it's exposed through these components or behaviors, Unity calls them, that you add to a game object, and that just changes its entire capabilities or nature. Like adding sound and input or animation, all that stuff. It's you do it through the inspector and adding components and behaviors. So I mean, that's kind of all right. So let's open up a more interesting thing. The other circumstance with Unity is this. You don't have to use the Unity hub. There's I don't know, maybe some pros and cons with that, but like this is like a separate app that lets you add and remove versions of the entire environment. So you could be running essentially any number of versions of Unity that you want or need, which you might have to, and I might have to, by the way, because for instance, I have a variety of projects that are all broken for today's demo because to save space, I got rid of an old version of Unity, which isn't really, it's trivial here. I can just go in the Unity hub to my installs, and you see, I only have one, and it's a fairly recent-ish one. If I click add, latest official releases is 2019 1.11 F1. So if I hit cancel, oh yeah, look at that. That's like one. So it's 4 versions newer than what I have is what's the latest in the world. So it's easy to just add it. Also, by the way, it is Unity is free for small companies.
Oh,
so that's a thing where I think I hesitated in the early years because I was like, I don't know if I wanted to license it, whatever. I can't remember, but I know somewhere along the way they changed their licensing, and that became more interesting. But yeah, I mean, I can add old versions of Unity. I can go back to 2017, 2018, what have you, which I might, honestly, to get some of my older game prototypes to work again. Because it's kind of harsh as far, you have this trade-off that can be a treadmill when you're trying to keep up to date with the latest features, and it's something that I did have as a bad habit on some old projects is jumping into that churn and keeping continually patching my work to make it work in the latest thing, which really isn't necessary. And I don't know. I don't think it's that constructive. But all right, if I jump to my project,
one quick question about the hub though. So you can save prior installs of the software. Can you then open up your old projects and save them to the new standard, or do you have to?
You totally can. But then they may have a lot of broken issues that you need to resolve.
Oh, okay.
So that's the thing. I can demo that. It's just a little bit of not a satisfying thing to watch. You just see lots and lots of errors.
You don't need to show that, but yeah, it's good to know. But yeah, so that's kind of weird. I guess there are similarities with, like, I can think of, like, in Clip Studio Paint, if you open up old Manga Studio files, sometimes things will get messed up in terms of like the way the layers were handled in like Manga Studio 4 versus Clip Studio Paint currently. So anyway, continue. What do you got on screen now?
That is a good point. Like, tools and platforms do have sort of breaking changes that happen sometimes. In some tools, it's infrequent, right? Because Clip Studio Paint, it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
And then the frequency of the updates, and then the amount of cost and churn and the difficulty that it takes to update the thing can vary too, depending on your project. So yeah, because there are some pretty big changes historically. So Unity kind of supported JavaScript in the past through something they called Unity Script. That's gone. Unity kind of supported Python in the past. That's gone. It was called Boo. Anyway, which is just a syntax really similar to Python. And these are, those events are part of the journey why I had a lot of hesitance with Unity, because when you code, which we'll jump into in a little bit, you work in C# now, and whatever, everyone's got their own opinions and what have you. It's not my favorite environment. I like to work in languages that are more scripting and flexible and look more like the English language, whereas I feel like my code is more like prose when it's like that. When C#, it's just my opinion. Who cares? I mean, you code in anything that gets the job done. Don't worry about it. Just sharing my honest feelings on the matter. They're just feelings. All right.
Okay.
You got to watch out for an alpha coder. You get alpha coders.
I see.
They will not like those opinions.
So we'll have to follow this up on an extra lean, is like how we both have a habit of going out of our way to not be that guy. We both have an alpha character in our head someplace that we're like, okay, just stay as far away from that as possible.
It's totally an anchor point, and then you crank up the avoidance.
So we take very wide steps in that direction. But we're looking at something cool on the screen right now. What are we looking at?
Okay, this is a demo project that Unity put out pretty recently. And it's called like RPG, right? RPG demo or something. And it's a pretty neat let's see. I'll quickly demonstrate it too, because again, pretty much 100% of what you see here is not me. I did not create this. Don't want to take credit, all that stuff. So let's see. I need to unselect something that I can demonstrate later. So when you have something in the inspector that you're like, I don't want this to actually run or get used, but I don't want to delete it, you can disable it by unchecking it. And so we'll take a look at that in a second. But so if I run this, you'll notice it like switches from the scene view to the game view. Can you hear that? All right, there is music. Okay, so I'm glad you actually. So you can actually pop things out too, and this is pretty handy. Where I just took sort of the scene view where it lays stuff out, and all of a sudden you'll see the scene view comes alive, even though it's not the game. So I can interact with my stuff in the scene.
Oh wow,
and it
that's neat.
Affects it live in the game. I can change properties on stuff. So this is powerful for learning. It's a playground to poke and explore. Really a strength of the tool. It's awesome. Okay, so then if I can move my character around, doodly do. And here I run into another character who activates a dialogue. And then I need to use the keyboard, not the mouse. All right, I'm getting some directions from this character where to go. And you'll see little interesting things here. So watch this. I'm walking in front of the tree, and it's solid. Wow. Something's amiss here as far as the input, but it's probably, I know why, because I changed some code. So I kind of broke the demo a little bit. So because my character is just like, will not stop walking. Can't stop and won't stop. But with the tree there, you see what happens to the tree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it becomes slightly transparent when he walks behind it.
Yeah, pretty cool. So here I am walking around this world, and I can go back again to the scene view, and you see all this stuff happening. And this is an area, a level of a game that is fully composed and running and is alive, right? It's like a, I don't know, in a way, kind of like a living, breathing dollhouse or sandbox. And let's see here. I'll hit stop on there. And then things kind of go back to the way they were before the game was run. Thoughts?
That's some very immediate feedback on what you're composing and doing in the game design. If you're watching like how it affects the characters who are actually, you know, active in it, as opposed to having to be like, okay, I made some changes, now hit run and see what it looks like, right? Which is what you were doing before.
It's this instant, like, you can figure out problems, like what might be needing to get fixed or adjusted or what have you. Let's see. I'm going to pop the scene back into the tab order here, and then so there's something that I was playing with. So these game demos are awesome. Unity has actual like training and all sorts of stuff you can study along with these. They released 3, I think, right around the same time this year. There's an RPG, there's a first person shooter, which is not violently themed. It's like you're some kind of you're a miniaturized scientist inside of a creature getting rid of germs, something like that. So that's a fun playground. And then they have a puzzle game too. That's and all 3 of them, you know, demonstrate interesting different things, and they're all kind of quirky and need adjustment. That it just invites you to sort of get in and get experience playing and trying to fix things. And they're just really well designed, because one of the things that can be super intimidating, you launch Unity with nothing, and it's staring into a void. It's like worse than a blank sheet of paper to me. Because especially you scratch the surface, you're like, oh my gosh, it's the 3D engine. Oh my gosh, I can do so many things. Where do I start? And then the community has gone lots of different ways. So hopefully you can you find some sources like I bought a class a couple of years back that gave me some traction with Unity from the Udemy platform. It's a place where you can, you know, buy workshops and study stuff. But of course, I mean, there's free YouTube videos, tons and tons of stuff out there. Oh yeah, and one awesome cheat sheet I wanted to mention too is on it's on the Ray Wenderlich site, and it's just a Unity cheat sheet, quick reference, some neat things for once you start getting into the code and stuff or what. So we might revisit this cheat sheet in a second.
Okay.
But then it also, of course, it does have the keyboard, the hotkey overview, right? And which is the QWERT thing. Again, that is your friend. Such a big deal to get comfortable switching between the tools, because if you every time you go all the way up there with your mouse and you click in the upper left corner, you know, it's not very playful and experimental with a nice feedback loop. Whereas if you're just hitting the keys, you're not having to jump out of your sandbox. So so what did I uncheck earlier? I unchecked this path follower script. And so this was when I thought to myself, how do I get this character to just start wandering around, right? I want, you know, this character, like, this, a funny coincidence how the character is sort of being covered up by the camera here too. I didn't point this out. So scenes have a camera. And that this is how, like, when we start the game, you're not zoomed all the way out. You are inside that little rectangle.
Yeah, there's a bounding box that's defined on the map that we're looking at, and that shows you like what the screen is going to be filled with. It's going to be filled with just this area. Got it. And the camera is in the center of that box, the camera icon.
So, and I should be able to adjust the camera by just shrinking that box. And I think I just made it. So think about how different games feel when you're really up in like close zoom on the character. Oh, that didn't really affect the zoom at all. There must be other behaviors on the camera here which we can just change while the game is running. No big deal. So size, what if we go 2? No, that didn't do it. Clipping planes. All right. So now I would need to research like how would I get this camera to be more zoomed in? Main camera. What if I change the scale? There we go.
Oh wow, squished it.
So I just changed the X and Y scale by half.
There we go.
And so now that zoomed it in.
Yep. All right. And this little guy that we're looking at is kind of doing this weird little dance back and forth.
Yeah, it's because of the experimental script I added. So if I just double click this thing, this should launch my code editor, which the code editor I associated with Unity is Microsoft Code or Visual Studio Code, which is sort of a gosh, I'm forgetting some of its competitors, but they're like, oh yeah, Atom, ATOM by I think Git puts that out, or no, GitHub, and a few others, things like Sublime Text, right? Sublime Text, and they are all essentially text editors of a sort with the ability to make them good at other tasks as well. And Visual Studio Code is a little bit, it's a lightweight coding development environment that lets you do things like it's when a text editor goes beyond this color syntax highlighting, and it starts to give you features like you can do you can put in breakpoints and start debugging and stepping through code while it's running. Now it's becoming like a more they call it an IDE, an integrated development environment. And so this is like a lightweight IDE. I like it. It's free. And anyway, that's why it launched, is because I associated that. And so this thing now we're outside Unity, but not too far. So this little script, Path Follower, this is something that I did some research about. How do I get a character to follow a path? And then I found a little tutorial. Where did I find this? No, I don't have it pulled up. But someone posted some code, and this is 80. This is like 92% what they had. And you'll notice, like, well, there's sections of the code. There's this part up here called using. So we are using different libraries to make this functionality happen in here. So that's where so we're, I don't know if, like, are we using system collections? I don't think I'm using a collection. So if I delete that and hit save, there shouldn't be anything that breaks. And what's funny is, like, I just hit save, and this is where we're still connected with this. Oh. Okay. So this is normalized, was part of the collections there. So I hit undo, I'll hit save, and essentially the code just compiles in the background, right?
Wow.
And then let's see, clear. I'll do clear on build too. So, all right, doodly doo. My little console. My console is where. So here's another piece of the UI we didn't really talk about. So you've got your project, and this is like the files in your entire game. So if you have anything from pre-set up art, animation, sound, then of course your scripts and what have you. This is a well-organized project. One of the reasons to, like, get something that's current and made from Unity, it's like they're going to bake in all sorts of smart choices and practices that are good to be influenced by. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you'll have your assets folder that is where you'll typically put all your different stuff. And what's interesting is then we'll get into this a bit later, when you use assets from the Unity asset store in its world, and not everything's paid in the asset store. They distribute their free stuff there too. This is where it pops up, and something that's nicely organized, like the creator kit. It's all in its own subfolder, and it has its own folders for all the different things, within. But if I was then customizing and making my own game, I would probably organize outside that folder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, food for thought with that stuff. But yeah, your project, this is so yeah, if let's say if we just do a filter for all scripts, we can easily jump to that. So we can see the script, on its own here, or we can see where is it? Path follower. Doodly-doo. Yep. Just hanging out right there. It's one of the scripts. And then, of course, we can get to it by, like we did earlier, by just clicking on it in context on the sort of the game object that was using it. Anyway, so now, on this script, there's a whole lot of stuff that you might think, well, what is it? Okay. So I've just pointed out there's this, so what are we using? So this is like basic introduction to object-oriented coding, right? Then you have a lot of stuff. So instead of in something like Python, I might just say, path follower, and but I don't have to typically, I don't have to use all these other distinctions and types and stuff for the most part. But here we go. We have a public class. That means it's available for the rest of the world to use this. And it's a class, meaning it organizes behavior and data, and it's called path follower, and it's of this type, mono behavior. Anyway,
okay.
So now there's these in the first part of the class, there's these variables, and notice that this one says public, and it is a forget what Unity calls it, but it's an array or a list, right? So it's a list of game objects, right? So everything's got a type, right? So that's the thing with this style of programming. It's the game object list, and its name is path node. So then no, wait, public game object list called path. Yeah, there we go, path node. So check this out, right? So because it's public, it's actually, this is where the Unity gets you into the visual environment as much as possible. So again, we're on the little path follower, the behavior script that was added to, if I scroll up, the character game object, and there's a list of path nodes. We can give it a size, and all of a sudden there's these elements appear. So let's change this to 1 and tab out of it. Now there's only the list is only 1 long. If we change it to 0, there's no list available. If we change it to 10, there's going to be 10 elements available. And so that's the I'm putting values into I'm putting values into that the script is going to use, right? So the script is going to consume that. So if we look at, well, what does path node mean? It gets used later on to sort of get. So the whole idea, the goal with this is it's a path follower, right? So how is the path formed? The path is formed by these nodes. These nodes are each game objects, whatever. Okay, so I have these 3 game objects, right? And see, they don't have anything visual about them. So if I hit W so I can start moving stuff around here, I'm going to put this path node way over here.
Oh, I see. And then
so this is just an invisible game object.
And your character is going to walk toward them once you run it. I got it. Okay.
Exactly. All right. So if we go back to the character, we're like, uh-oh, we changed this too much, and we only have 3. So I'm going to change this back to 3. But they're not, what in the world? They're blank, right? It says none. Here's where we get some trickery with how we click the mouse and stuff. So I need to click and not let go of the mouse. And then I can drag a game object into there. Boom. I just gave a value that's going to be consumed by the script, right?
Oh, so wow.
Yeah.
So, and in other words, the control panel window is saying like, I don't see it. It's not there. And you went into the game environment, dragged the object into that control panel, and said it's right here. Yeah. Basically, is what you did.
Yep.
Oh, okay. This is reminding me of that Eddie Izzard joke when he's talking about not being able to print from his Mac, and he says cannot find printer, and he's like, it's right there.
That's good. So what is going to happen here? So now let's look at this as almost like a checklist or a summary of like, okay, so now we've got these variables up here, but now we've got methods or functions or however you want to call it, as far as like little pieces of code that are available because of their names that can get called and used. So then check this out. There's a pattern in Unity behaviors that so this function start, who calls start? So if I search for the start, I don't see that function getting called, but it gets called. Check node, that gets checked regularly, but how is it getting invoked at some point? Oh, there's this update thing. Well, who's calling update? Nobody. Wait. So what happens here? There's this pattern for Unity behaviors where they have this list of functions that gets run, and this is a nice cheat sheet thing. And I'll try to find pretty quick here. So check it out. This is the mono behavior event execution order. So again, hey, look at this. Path follower is type of mono behavior. All right. What happens here? So awake gets called once when the object is first loaded, right? If you want to, if maybe in your code you're enabling and disabling stuff all the time, like maybe it's you have a behavior that is about a character when they are under stress, right? And so if the character's under stress behavior is enabled, all of a sudden it starts acting in a way that code tells it to act, right? Mm-hmm. And then when it's then anyway, so there's these event like on enable that gets called at a particular time. Start gets called at a particular time. So hey, start, right? Look at this. Boom, start is right here. So start, check node sort of gets things ready, right? Nice. So we need to call check node once on start. All right. Update. This gets called every animation frame. So this is where you're in a living game engine that's 3D, crazy powerful, and that's one of the sort of like a game heartbeat happens, right? And there's a loop. There's a loop that happens when you deal with, you have input, and what is your simulation in the game going to do with that input? And so you manage that, and so you do this frequently. Maybe every animation frame, maybe not every animation frame. And so, there's something like that heartbeat of update lets you run and get your game to be this living thing, right? Now, maybe you have things that need to happen just in more specific timings related to the other. Think of your game flow as this big checklist of stuff. And maybe some of the things on the checklist you want to have all the time or guaranteed, and other things not as much, right? Anyway, so you have this list of that you just can plug into. It's like if you care about let's see, on application paused. So you want to deal with you want to deal with a pause, you want to deal with the disable or enable. You just add that as a function, and so Unity wires that up for you, right? Boom. Now all of a sudden you're handling that. Like, we don't have to have a start, but we do. And because it's there, Unity is going to do what happens, and just once. So this gets started, and then this gets called, more than once, gets called like every animation frame, right? Okay, so that's bringing this to life. And so here we can go into the details as far as what the code is doing. We're trying to essentially understand where the character should be over time based on where they are now and where we're trying to get them to go, right? And so this is this code is buggy. I need to make it more forgiving or whatever, because we notice what the behavior does. So the idea is roughly, if the position that the character is currently at isn't the one that we're targeting at the moment, well, keep moving toward it. And then of course the opposite case was if it is, and then if there's still more paths on the node, we'll get the next node and keep rolling. Okay. And then we have a little debug going on right there. So I can comment that out, but debugs I'll leave it there and you'll see where it happens. So with this stuff in mind, let's run this again. Doodly do. Takes a second to compile. And assuming I didn't break anything.
Oh.
No, I clicked on console. So the debug stuff will appear in console. We got the little spinny beach ball. We know something's happening. All right. Here we go. Character is, so that it never thinks it needs to go to the next node. So it's going to the first node and just never quite there, right?
Got it.
So I need to make that comparison more forgiving, because it says zipping around. So I need to make that so if it's more approximately close enough to the node, move on to the next node. So,
but that's a neat script. Yeah, that's I mean, you demonstrated the idea, right. And that's really cool. How for somebody who's a visual thinker like me, that seems a lot more intuitive, just to be like, okay, plant these flags, essentially these invisible flags on the landscape, and have the character move between them at regular intervals to create this a feeling of natural movement in the game.
Yeah, that is really cool, and especially if you think, well, if you're not making a game by yourself, maybe you have someone on your team who is, more amenable to doing the behavior coding, right? And then that just for you appears like, let's see. So if I click on this other character, this NPC, and I can add that path follower. Oh yeah, it's already have it typed here. So path follower, I can just go boop. Guess who's a path follower now? This character too.
Nice.
And we know it's broken after one. So let's just go ahead and grab. I did it again. I lifted up my mouse finger. All right. So I need to grab this game object, don't lift up, drag over, and say, haha, you're element 0. And then now we should have Pathfinder working for us as a behavior on 2 different game objects. And it's just going to take a little bit to compile. Let's see what happens.
It's still pretty snappy considering. Oh, look, our little dude is moving around now.
Well, all right. Well, here's where I can do. Well, that didn't work like I expected. Oh, null reference exception. We have an error. So object reference is not sent to an instance of the. Okay, so then I can double click on this error and it will go to that line. So I am getting the reference to the character in a way that isn't compatible with the NPC. So now I would have to change how I do this. Right now it's it has this assumption based on let's see. So if I look for awake is one of our events we can just tap into just by naming naming a function like that. And so character, this is getting character get component, character controller, 2D. Let's see, if character is null, then let's do something else. So here's where I would try to do this differently. So character could be game object dot find. Okay, no, that's going to be different things. So if right now character, here's the fun of typed languages. So character is a specific type. It's character controller 2D, right? Mm-hmm. So this is where the NPC doesn't have a character controller 2D, right, on it.
Okay.
And the player character does. So I would need to come up with a different strategy to do this and to make it compatible with both types of game objects. Anyway, there's a little bit of real world debugging, thinking through, and then I would be like, oh shoot, I need to change my approach here and find something that would work with both.
Okay.
So
well, this is despite it being it looks very intuitive. There's also like in the coding part that I'm still seeing some wizardry happening in front of me. So do you want to take a break and then come back to a line from your notes about Unity? And okay. And then we'll dig even a little bit deeper. But first, I'm sorry for the folks who are watching on YouTube. You're not going to be able to hear the ad spot music, but you will in the actual recording. So that makes both versions of the show are like a little less this week. But yeah, we're gonna take a minute to thank some people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/LeanIntoArt is the website. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. If you believe in Rob and Jerzy, you believe in what we do, you can support us for as little as $1 a month, and I want to thank 5 people who've been doing exactly that. First up, Brandon Dayton. Thank you, Brandon, for supporting us. Longtime friend of the show. You can find Brandon on Twitter at Brandon Dayton. Also, Tim F. Thank you, Tim, for supporting the show. And Gail Bushman. Thank you, Gail. I believe you can find Gail on Instagram at Nightingale Art. And also, Alexander Steenhorst. I haven't seen Alexander's name in a while. Is he a new supporter or just not gotten into the mix with the random generator? But either way, thank you, Alexander, for supporting us on the show. And Jodels Pox, you can find Jodels on Twitter at JBombArtist. And you can join them at patreon.com/LeanIntoArt, where you will find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record only for people who support us on Patreon. Look at this, 134 episodes in there. You can join for $1 a month. You can listen to them all. And they are often just Rob and me riffing live and discovering a topic along the way. And we've done this 134 times. It's hard to believe, Rob. Once again, thanks to everybody who supports us at patreon.com/LeanIntoArt. It means a lot to us.
Really does. Thank you so much.
So okay, how about I'm going to play another transition music that you won't hear. But the folks who are listening in the audio will get a little bit of a cue that we're in another section now. Okay. So what are we doing now?
Okay. So this is so I'm curious, like, of what you've seen so far. Like you've shared some reactions and whatnot. There's it seems like the visualness of the main environment has it seems intuitive to you. I find that amazing because I didn't find this intuitive. No, I'm checking. No, I still don't find it intuitive.
It's a very visual interface, and I was thinking about it as you were doing the demo. I was remembering when I was first learning HTML. Oh gosh, like in 2000, 2001, and somebody pointed me at Dreamweaver, right? Which was Macromedia back then, right?
Yeah.
And I remember it being it was like as somebody who was using Quark Express and Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, like these very visually oriented design tools, to suddenly be presented with a visual way to think about laying out a web page, it was like, oh, of course, this is so much better than like typing out lines and lines of text and then like, you know, loading it into a web browser to see if it worked. But the thing that I remember is what was that? It was webmonkey.com was the website that I was using back then. Do you remember that website?
Wow. Yeah.
I think I found it on Lycos.
Oh, that's some time travel. Oh, okay. Wow.
Netscape Navigator. But yeah, WebMonkey.
Are you
was
making
where
a Stranger Things about web dev? What's going on?
It's kind of conjuring that feeling in my head right now. Yeah, like, but I remember participating in some forums, or rather, just like, you know, reading forums about HTML design, and there was this very strong resistance to Dreamweaver. People were saying, "Don't use Dreamweaver; it makes bad code. It makes really junky, inelegant." HTML code of your website, and when things break, you won't know how to fix it because you don't know how to code. So I remember like learning all of that code anyway, just because that put the fear in me of like, I don't want my website to break and not be able to fix it. But I wonder if is there any risk of that? Like, is Unity, because it's creating this like what makes it very attractive interface to somebody like me who thinks very visually, is there a cost in terms of it's going to be harder for me to understand how to fix when things go wonky, like with what happened with the Pathfinder script?
Is it? So yeah, you're asking a fantastic question. Like this line of thinking of, in a way, am I out of arm's reach, out of being able to really, you know, control and affect and manage my project? And if things change in the world, like what if I wanted to move this to oh gosh, one of the other environments, and it's just totally escaping me right now, but it's like, oh, like Game Maker or something, right? Can I do that? Or hey, what if I want to port this to JavaScript or Lua, and you know, I think I can make this game work somewhere else because it's compatible enough. It's 2D, whatever. Or I imagine another apt one would be, well, because you know, the kind of like the heavyweight, the big players as far as this kind of game engine would be Unreal in Unity. So I think I want to port to Unreal. How do I do that, right? Because there's all this sort of stuff that defines what this game is, that it's not in a place that I can access easily. What's funny, this is a place where I'm super naive. Is there a way, is there like sort of behind the scenes definition files that take care of all this, and they could be delved into and used somehow to help migrate, right? Whereas if your game is all images, sound, code, you know, maybe some configuration files, it's a lot of work. But you know, if you're creating a game in an environment that works in that way, it's more portable. To some ways, you probably still are, though, like more portable with like a lot of asterisks. And it's because no matter what, moving something to a different platform will take a ton of work. There's ideas and assumptions everywhere that you're building with, and they will run into conflicts in the next platform. So I don't know, like if you can really create a safety net there with any tool set. But you're right. It's an awesome thing to think of. But as far as the quality aspect, I don't think that's really a concern with Unity. It's like, this is it's a dedicated, super well-funded tool and team and community making stuff better all the time. So the idea of like poor performance and, you know, like that's its heart. And as far as this thing performs well on a lot of platforms, give us your money, right? That's what they do.
Yeah.
And so it has a little bit of that like portability challenge, but not really the performance aspect.
Okay. Well, that's what we do on this show is we evaluate trade-offs when we're making choices about tools. So, and it looked to me like the coding sort of, what was it, the vocabulary that they use is pretty straightforward and looks easy enough to learn. Like when you're going through like sort of the definitions of like, here's the different kinds of events and classes and object assignment language that this I don't know if I'm using the right language myself, but what I perceived you were doing on the screen was like, okay, you need to know these words. Here's a cheat sheet to know these words so that you can assign events to these things. And there was you're doing some if then coding inside of there. So if then and else, which we've talked about on the show. It's been a while, but we've talked about this before. It's pretty straightforward kind of logic.
Yeah, I mean, you have the idea of comparisons, and so you have booleans, and then you control the flow as far as and with conditionals, and then if and else, and then variables, and then loops, and there's just a lot there. What's funny is you're not having to manage a lot of your own loops because you inherently being part of that world of Unity, you're in particular loops or specific subscriptions to events, right? So like you can get so far without having to create your own like game engine plumbing, right? It's like game engine plumbing is a great place to learn a lot of different powerful concepts, but it's also like an abyss where you'll like it's hard to make the plumbing and finish the game both, especially depending on the size of your team and availability. Capacity. But here, this plumbing of just the idea that on a particular event, gosh, there's another object. I probably should share my screen again. That like how the tree works is so elegant. I will actually share my screen.
Okay.
Beep boop beep doop. All right, share screen. Okay, so like let's select this tree object, and all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, we see see a couple things on this tree. There's a round collider and then a rectangular collider. Cool. Now so there's a circle collider. I can click that and edit it. There's a box collider. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Now there's also this little script. Like I pointed out the behavior of how the tree would just sort of like alpha fade out, right? When the character passed behind it. So I just double click that script, boom, my code editor launches. Lots of conveniences. Not going to throw a parade for Unity, but it is really nice. I like it. I respect it. So it's okay. So here we are. We have this
this, by the way, is like I've known Rob for a long time. This is like as close to grumpy as he ever gets.
Oh, yeah, that's very kind. So public class fading sprite, instance tracker fading sprite, fascinating. So this is a new thing. Like I haven't made something of this kind of built in this way before. But I know fading sprite is an available behavior script. So it has a sprite renderer, and then it has. So if I look over here, though, I don't see that available. So this is internal, right? So these variables aren't being advertised out here to be messed with back in the UI. That's just inside here. So then now you're like, I don't see an awake. I don't see okay, there's an awake. So sprite renderer equals get component sprite render. That's cool. So then that means this is available to use. Fascinating. Target alpha. I wonder how. Yeah, so there's some funkiness going on behind the scenes here that I need to dig into, like as far as exactly how it's working. But like it's getting triggered just by this on trigger enter 2D, on trigger exit 2D. And that's just by naming something, a little chunk of code can now activate. So Unity deals with floating point numbers. I imagine it's for precision, right? And so you end up needing to write. So it's not just write this this decimal. You also have to add an F for something that's a type of a float. Little things, you get used to it, right?
Okay.
So target alpha, instead of 1, it's 0.5 when this object enters, and when it exits, it goes back to 1. Full, it's not faded out anymore.
Yeah, full opacity.
Yeah, thank you. So that is, I don't know, that's really powerful. We're all of a sudden like fading sprite. You can just add this to anything now. And there's not like all this plumbing, like I was talking about. You didn't have to sort of wire up an event with particular specific objects and all that. Unity does it, where they're like, there are events because of colliders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the collider is going to throw that event. And
I see. So like the collider sort of bounding area that you have drawn on there it doesn't just create physics events, like in terms of when you had that little rock object bounce off of that coral reef. It can also be like when the collider is entered by another character, make this behavior happen. So if you had like an animation of a bird that flies out of the tree, that would be activated upon making contact with the tree. Right, instead of it being like a physical event of like you bump off the tree. Any variety of things can happen upon contact with the collider shape.
Yeah, exactly, and which is powerful. So you didn't have to write any of that plumbing about the concept of colliding or whatever. You just that collision is available because of this engine. So, and I care to do something when the collision starts and when the collision's done. Right. That's pretty powerful, and an example of like we didn't have to write that plumbing. So, what else do we want to cover here? I think.
Well, I wonder if we've talked about a lot of the things, you had a list of vocabulary to potentially go over,
and I think we hit a lot of it, right? So the event loop. That's our, it's phrased differently here, but like the flow of when these functions are called, and then you just get to have your code happen. That's kind of the event loop, and then the different we didn't do a 3D example. I could load a 3D project. The idea of let's see. So there's just like this vocabulary. It's like a quick list of some things that like you can get so far with only learning just a little bit, right? Like the idea of a vector. The vectors store position information, and it's a very powerful thing. Unity has a lot of ability to compare vectors and stuff baked in, right? So it's not that you have to create yourself. The idea of a scene. So like games are often made of multiple scenes, right? So we happen to be looking at, in this project, there is only this scene, which is, the sample scene. But we could create or clone this scene to be something else. Oh my gosh, prefabs. I forgot to mention prefabs. So then let's look at, when there's something that's blue, look at how many trees there are in this thing, right? There's so many trees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a lot of trees. If I zoom out, I start just highlighting these trees at random. They're all over the place. But they are all based on a canonical tree. So like this is based on a prefab, and this is where, maybe if you remember the days of Flash, you could create movie clips, and then, so you kind of had this reusable object, right?
Yeah, it becomes like an asset what made them valuable was that the program didn't have to load up each instance. It loaded up the asset once and then just populated it throughout your project.
So I'm
So
going to
this,
change the shape of the tree a bit. I'm just going to do
okay.
it. So I'm going to give it a Y scale of 1.5
Okay.
and then go back into our scene. Scenes have been modified. Save. Whoops, I went to the wrong scene because, of course, I need to be in the demo group of folders, prefabs, scenes. Boop, boop. Jump in the sample scene. Now look at that. All the trees based on that prefab are scaled in an interesting way.
Yeah. This
That's
became
it.
palm trees.
We that changed one prefab, and we could have literally changed the art to a palm tree if we had that in our assets. So pretty interesting here. Sample scene open. All right. So yeah, the idea of prefab. So if you make a thing, like, oh, for instance, we have these position objects. Let's say I want this to be like, rename, position thing, and then let's call it I want this to look a little different. So if I can give it an icon so it's easier to find, right? So it's an invisible game object, but I've given it a little select icon, right? So maybe I could change that to a little green diamond. All right. That's handy. So now the position thing just exists once in this scene in Unity, but then I can just in whatever folder I want, I can drag this and now it becomes an asset that is a prefab, right?
I see. So now you've made your invisible object. If you ever want to, you can use this invisible object as many times as you want, and it'll always have that green diamond on it to make it easy to spot.
Mm-hmm.
So
Or if it's
memorize there, yeah.
That's how these trees are made and all that stuff. A prefab is just pre-set up thing. So really neat, powerful thing. Behavior script, we went over that. Sprites and sprite sheets. That's an interesting creature. There's we look at let's see, let's pick this character, and then it has a given sprite of thief. And if I double click on thief, oh wow, this launches a sprite sheet just in an external file viewer, right?
Okay.
So this is the character. So this is the file of characters 01 animation sheet, right? So just drag this in, and then you can configure on. So by using sprite sheets when you're doing a 2D game and whatnot, you can improve the performance. So this gets loaded into memory once, but then it's only displaying little particular sections of it for each character and frame.
I see.
So then if I want, I can click this and I get a little selector. So I can change the main character to a different sprite, because this sprite sheet was imported, and then let's see, what's that tool here? So if I go to the boop doop sprite 2D sprite editor, if I click on the sprite editor, oops, it launches in the other window. So if I so notice how I want to make this bigger. There we go. So there is so if I hit that, is it going to let me, whoops, scroll up? Okay, there we go. So now we see these are each sprites within the sprite sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have it slice automatically. If this is, you created this in whatever tool, like Clip Studio Paint, whatever. This is just a PNG with a transparent background. And whatever tool you use, or if you use something like I've been playing with this animation app called Creature Pro, and that lets you export a sprite sheet because it's sort of like, well, here you go. You compose all these animations. I can export a sprite sheet for you, and then you need to go into Unity to then, have it be recognized as these separate frames. And whether it's used for animation or not, or if it's just like static stuff, that's fine. You're still going to be, saving memory. If you're reusing anything, any image info, it's a good idea to put it in a sprite sheet.
That's cool. Yeah, this I do remember from the workshop that I led, because the kids designed their character, and then they actually had to draw walking sprite, jumping sprite, and whatever action they perform, like some kind of like shooting a fireball, whatever. And then they actually scanned them there on the spot, and then imported them in as a sprite sheet into Unity, and the kids were making their drawings interact with digital environments, which was really fun to watch.
That's pretty awesome. It's a great idea for a workshop.
Yeah, I'd like to do it again. that would be a fun one to do again. Okay, so are we at a point? Are we heading towards final thought time?
I think so. I think we've done a lot of exploring, and I don't know if the fresh perspective came across, or if it was more like the the begrudging acceptance perspective. But it's a really powerful tool, and I just wanted to share some impressions that like stuff that you're familiar with from different game engine things. I mean, it's here and then some. It's pretty wild.
It looks very approachable to me. If I had an idea for a game, I would not be nervous about getting started with something like this. So it made a good impression on me, Rob.
Okay, well, there you go. And what's funny, we're not sponsored by Unity, whatever, and just I've come to I've landed on, this is where I'm going to make games for now.
You're so agnostic. There's always like this arched eyebrow of skepticism about whatever tool you use, but I think that's an awesome thing to model for the leaners as well. Is that no tool is perfect. Clip Studio Paint just rolled out an update where you can now finally skew text and turn text at an angle while it's still editable text. Whereas before you had to rasterize it and then you could manipulate it a little bit more. But and great step in the right direction, But it also kind of broke the way you use the balloon, what is it called? The object tool with the balloon. So now you have to if you're manipulating the text, you have to click off the layer, then click on the balloon in order to edit the balloon, because the balloon and the text are on the same layer. But they still don't have CMYK support, right? So it's it's awesome up to a point, right? So even when they solve a lot of problems, no tool is the one ring, right? So anyway, I think skepticism is healthy.
Yeah, well, and pragmatically, it's really powerful, right? So rolling with its quirks is, you're going to be rolling with quirks for every single platform you end up choosing. So this, I find the quirks of Unity acceptable, and that's just one person's opinion, and it's it's ridiculously powerful.
Okay, well, we will conclude with final thought in a couple minutes. We're going to talk about the asset store a little bit. But before we do that, we got to thank some other people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be us. We make this show possible. We make stuff, and then in the making of the stuff, we come up upon these topics that we bring to the show week after week. And the thing that I made recently that I hope you will check out is Boulder and Fleet: Mining for Trouble. It is a 92-page graphic novel that is now available on indieplanet.com. You can get to it very easily by just going to boulderandfleet.com/books, and that'll actually take you to my Indie Planet storefront, basically the books that I have for sale on Indie Planet. And it's about a bear and a bird who are best friends, and they go on adventures together. Fleet the bird wants to be the most famous adventurer of all time, and she concludes that the way to do that is by defeating enemies. And Boulder likes going on adventures to help people, and he would rather make friends of people than make enemies of people. So there's a little bit of a tension between the two characters. It's comedic tension. It's got Brandon Dayton once described my writing style as I'm especially good at capturing character voice. And I think this book is a good example of that, because in this story, they come upon these mineral gals who are a team of villains who have taken over a mine because mineral people eat precious metals. And the villain team in this story, I sort of concocted the idea of, like, what if a group of 6th grade girls decided to become supervillains? What would happen? And that's the dynamic between the 4 characters. So it's a funny book. It's for kids. It's for grown-ups, and it's at boldandfleet.com/books. Rob, what are we looking at on your screen, Rob?
Oh, this is a game I made called Guitar Fretter, and I thought it'd be worth mentioning since so Guitar Fretter recently had its 9th anniversary, 9th birthday, what have you.
Wow! Congratulations! Yeah. Holy cow!
Thank you. It's let's see. You can see right now it says version 1.6. It's yeah. I mean, this is a game I made to make it just a playful experience to learn the note positions on a guitar fretboard, and it works for like bass or guitar. But really, if you think about any stringed fretted instrument, because that has 4, 5, 6, or 7 strings, because you can actually do you can turn on custom tuning and go ahead and make adjustments to any string, right? So I can turn that on or off. I can play on easy, normal, or hard. There's all these flexible different modes. There's just a guitar chart mode, right? So if you just want to play with a guitar and see the note positions, right? And I should totally pipe the audio in, but like, yeah, this is just, it's making guitar sounds, and you just get to see a chart there, right? So but the main thing of this is well, it's the game, right? So you have it's a combination of like I've called it like Galaga or Space Invaders meets like Memory Match kind of thing. And it just helps where, like, I made this to help me with this basic activity of like really starting to associate where the different note positions are, right? So yeah, you can memorize in school EAD, GBE for this typical 6-string guitar, right? But you know what? There is more to it, and you'll pick up on these patterns. That's what happened to me after a while. For honestly, making the game, and then even though I play guitar for years, it's been helpful for me, and I know it's been used by guitar instructors and teachers throughout the world. And it's been around 9 years. It's I do plan on updating, involving, making a sequel, but because of the 9th birthday, it's I decided to set the price to be free for like 7 days, and so there's a few more days left for that, and whatever platform. So that's on Android and iOS and Mac and Windows. So yeah, Guitar Fretter is free right now, and if you got it on one platform, get it on another one or whatever, or just get them all, collect them all right now. It's free.
Guitarfretter.com.
Yeah, right.
All right, cool. Wow, congratulations on the anniversary. And yeah, everybody who's listening to this, what's the date today? It is the 25th of July, 2019.
I think
so.
Like Monday or so, the sales will be automatically done.
So this is why it pays to tune into the show live or download it day of. Okay, great. So guitarfretter.com. If you are here because you like the way we think about stuff more than the stuff we make, that's fair enough. The show is the thing we make too, and it's based on the way we think about things. And there's more stuff like it at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download self-contained videos at a price of your choosing, even free. You don't have to pay anything if you don't want to. If you're watching the video on YouTube right now, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show. If you listen to it in a podcatcher, giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the show, that helps more people find the show. So the more people who show up and can participate with the show means that there's more people for you to interact with, and it also means there's more opportunities for us to make the show sustainable through things like Patreon and other workshop sales. So we thank everybody who has been doing all those things. It means a lot to us. Okay, final thought time, Rob.
Okay, Quick thoughts. The Unity Asset Store is a really interesting resource. They found a way to, um, like, one of the paths for being viable and making games and being a game dev company is you can make stuff for other people to make games. And so they made a marketplace, right? So we just in the sort of advertisement break, we mentioned other marketplaces, places where you go publish things and people can buy them and whatever. And here Unity did this and they baked it right in. So like the asset store is one of the tabs in the UI. You can customize your layout and stuff. You don't have to have it there, but it's pretty handy. So when you are exploring the asset store, you're looking for solutions to different problems. Like, let's say I'm curious about particles, and so particles are this sort of special effect, right? There's you've encountered it in all sorts of things that like lightning could be dealt with as particles, little glowing lights, or stars in the sky, water drops, rain, all sorts of things where there's a lot of objects working kind of together as a system. Think of that as particles, explosions, stuff like that. And so here you go. I searched for particles. There's a whole bunch of different interesting options. This is a great resource. I have to the kind of scope and variety of different assets out there. It varies a ton as far as the style of who created it and the experience of using it. But it's I don't know. It's a great tool. Like, I have in my assets different sort of like big boosts and helpers that will that I've saved to try to learn from and more quickly make things. Things like those free so like we were looking at Creator Kit RPG specifically. So a lot of the episode we were taking a look at that one. Creator Kit Puzzle, Creator Kit RPG, and Creator Kit FPS, all free, made by Unity. Pretty amazing patterns to follow there. And anyway, yeah, you can see a few others that I've saved in my list. It's kind of a there's almost, I mean, think about like Clip Studio Paint has its sort of what do they call that? Where your materials, right?
Yeah, the materials folder. It's very similar. You can create like a whole bank of assets that you can just reuse, and you can add to that asset bank like the way you can in Unity by making your own objects, or they have a marketplace where you can go and download free things or purchase things to like make the job easier. Yeah, so you can actually get like snowfall as a brush, right? And it's like, here we go. Here's like, I'm just gonna wipe it on the screen and we got snowfall now.
Super powerful. And so, right. So it's not like this amazing, like totally never heard of a concept or whatever, but like it's pretty useful. And I think the prices are overall reasonable depending on what you want to solve. Lots of stuff that's free, but like I bought Rewired, for instance, that it helped me add, there's another game engine that I like. There's what's it called? More Mountains makes a couple of cool things. The top-down engine, pretty interesting. I need to update it. One of the demos I wanted to share is some stuff I was working on using the top-down engine, which adds even more. It gets you even closer to a completed game, right? So again, Unity, so many infinite possibilities. Different assets and things help you assemble games without doing as much work, right? And there's still a ton of work to do, but top-down engine plus the Rewired was helping me deal with input. Unity doesn't exactly so how it handles input is a little bit of a puzzle for me. I think probably your experience would be different if you're working on a PC. You're working on a Mac, it's kind of weird when you plug in your game controller and how stuff works. So something like Rewired abstracts that away, and it lets you create separate your control schemes. So like if someone switches between one type of controller and another one, or if they run it on Mac or Windows, or if they use keyboard and mouse and use a game controller, I mean, it solves a problem that I think I would guess at some point Unity would evolve to maybe make it a little easier. But yeah, input, right? But I made a twin stick shooter thing that with that plus the um, more mountains top down engine. Anyway, so yeah, food for thought. I've got this whole like list of assets that I'm keeping an eye on that I might pick up when they're on sale. I got assets that I've already been playing with, and then yeah, that's I guess that's all I got for now in assets. It's a pretty amazing resource, the asset store.
No, that's cool. Well, like you described, it seems that this is a very mature and robust environment to work in, with a lot of affordances and a lot of ways to just set you to making your thing rather than having to build it from scratch. That's terrific. And I think it's really cool that like a lot of different softwares are heading in that direction. Like I know that Metabang does the same kind of thing with like an asset management system and then like a marketplace in order to get more power ups, as it were, and Clip Studio Paint and so on. That's awesome. Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks for this walk around Unity. I feel like it's not such a mysterious thing anymore. So, like I said, if I was going to make a game, I wouldn't feel quite so nervous about it now. So,
and yeah, I mean that's cool. It has some amazing strengths and approachability, especially when you combine it with learning a few basics plus the asset store. It's at least a really powerful playground that you can jump into for free. So it's a good place. I still am not going to throw it a parade, but I respect it. It's amazing.
All right. Well, thanks again, Rob. And thanks everybody for downloading, listening, and watching. We record the show on Thursdays. Looks like noon, but we're still playing with it because we got to try out some other different streaming softwares. But you can follow us on Twitter. You're gonna hear some social media information in a minute, and that will tell you where to follow us to get updated on when and how we're doing the show. But we usually stream it live on YouTube and then collect it as a podcast at patreon.com/leanintoart and leanintoart.com. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger, also of leanintoart.com, and I'm on Instagram as Rob Stenzinger.
Okay, bye. Okay, I'm going to turn off the stream. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out.
Thank you.